On behalf of the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung in Budapest, I would like to welcome you to our today's international conference on wage convergence in Europe. As we have a common market, of course, we have common economies, so it's very important to know a lot about the economic relations and dependencies, and also to work for a wage convergence, also discussing the issue what we did here, the minimum wages and living wages in Europe.
Value added is equivalent to the cake that we can distribute as national income between labor, capital and the government. So what is extra to be distributed becomes smaller and smaller. There's hardly any new gain in extra room for distribution. Not only a causation from productivity increases to wage increases, but also the opposite holds. Wages also influence productivity. What we find is that a 1% wage increase corresponds on average to about 0.3 to 0.5% productivity increase. And vice versa, if you restrain wage development, you sacrifice wages, you get the opposite effect. It costs productivity, it reduces productivity.
Wages which were just a little bit higher than the minimum wage, you could also expect that they will then increase further.
Then there were some general exemptions.
What we saw is that the minimum wage increased, especially the wages in the lower end of the labor market. And what was very interesting is that we do not really investigate employment losses. And what we also saw is that we saw this conversion that the marginal employed were reduced and employment covered by social security has increased.
Is exactly the reverse. I do agree that there will come a time when the wages will be much higher than what productivity allows us, and it's not so far away. Within a few years we could reach a stage when our wage growth actually becomes way too high for our productivity growth. The question is how the government can actually influence productivity, and obviously it's by investing in education, it's by investing in the healthcare and the health status of society, it's by investing in research and development and the level of technology in the country, it's by investing in retraining of those who are already employed. These are the ways, and generally the infrastructure, these are the ways through which a government can have a positive influence on productivity, which is the upper limit for wages. Vice versa, they can have a negative influence. If they do not invest in these areas, then obviously productivity will remain low, which will lead to lower wages.
Differences between high-wage countries and Germany are largely linked to the composition of workforce and composition of companies. Once we compare the like-for-like workers, Hungary and Germany, we actually get larger wage gaps. So it's not that the composition of workforce explains the differences in averages. It's actually on the reverse. Once we control like-for-like worker, we get wider wage gaps.
And at the same time, there is a need for additional EU assistance to support human capital and education and training in the less developed regions of the European Union. Otherwise, the single market will be just too imbalanced, and these asymmetries will aggravate instead of sustained convergence.
Of course, the single market determines the conditions for wage setting in each country. So it's surprising there is so little coordination between the actors. Of course, the European Union can do a lot of support, can give support to development of social partner organizations in countries where they are weak, like in Central and Eastern Europe. That would be important. I mean, if the European Union helps workers and employers to organize themselves, they can negotiate. If they are not organized, very difficult to negotiate. The second point the EU can do, and I think does a lot, the EU can promote productivity growth.
There is a need for a pay rise in Europe. We are going to launch in few weeks an initiative about a possible European wage alliance for wage upward convergence.
First of all, we hope to reach the alliance in a few months. That is already a first step. And of course, the purpose of the alliance is exactly to start a process for wage convergence involving governments that should set up, on the one side, higher minimum wages in each and every country, and second, make sure that social partners can deliver proper collective bargaining, particularly in the countries where collective bargaining is not well developed or it has been dismantled during the austerity period. So this is the core of the alliance. The role of governments is fundamental, the role of the European Commission, but then of course social partners must play a role in the alliance, starting with multinational companies that should become really the champions for this alliance.